All right, hello again. So in this video, we're going to take a quick look at Visual Studio Code. It's another code editor like brackets. So I think you all just did an exercise in brackets, the first exercise, right? And we're in kind of a little transitional period. Adobe has decided to end support for brackets. So you're welcome to use brackets for the class. It'll probably work for years, probably. I think, maybe. We'll see. But a lot of people have shifted over to Visual Studio Code, or VS Code for short. So for the class, for now, I'm going to let you guys use whichever one you want. I tend to like some things in brackets. VS Code is a little bit of overkill for what we're doing in the class right now, but you can use either one. So I thought I would show you a little bit about VS Code so that if you want to use that going forward, you can. They are both text editors, right? So we talked about that, I think. So it doesn't matter what text editor you use to do this HTML and CSS stuff. It's just plain text, right? But how you do it in the editor is can be a little bit different. Obviously, you might have different shortcuts and things like that, but you're basically typing the same stuff. You're putting in the same code, the same HTML, the same CSS, all that kind of stuff is the same. So you could obviously open a file you started in brackets and put it in VS Code and it's going to be fine, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. So you guys can use either one, I guess is the short answer for that long thing I just said, whatever I said. So we're just going to, like I said, we're going to go over a little bit about VS Code, not super in depth. I will link to some videos from Microsoft. So Microsoft owns or runs VS Code. It's open source, I think. So, but anyway, I'll link to some videos for some more in-depth stuff if you want to get into that. But like I said, it's not really the most important part of the class. The other stuff is. This is just the editor. It's kind of like a photography class. The camera is important, but really it's the photos you take. That's a bad analogy. But anyway, okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So like I said, Adobe, depending on when you see this, Adobe ended supposedly support for brackets on September 1st, 2021. Like I said, it'll still work. But anyway, so that's kind of why we're doing this is slowly going to be shifting the class over to probably Visual Studio Code. You will see some of the videos are made with other apps. Like I said, it doesn't matter what text editor you use. So you might see 3 or 4 different ones, depending on when they get updated. The videos get updated because if they're still relevant, then they don't get updated. And if something changes significantly, they do. So you might see, I don't know, you might see 3 or 4 different editors. It's like a free-for-all. So the Visual Studio Code did set up sort of a migration plan, I guess, for people that are used to brackets if they want to use Visual Studio Code. So obviously you can go to look up Visual Studio Code to download Visual Studio Code. You need to do that, right? It does work for Mac OS, Windows, and Linux, so you can do any of those. I'm on a Mac, so it showed me Mac, but you can download for anyone you want. There's also an extension pack that they kind of put together. So VS Code, like brackets, which actually we don't use too many in the videos to keep it simple, but VS Code is extensible, which means you can add stuff on, like add-on features and things. Because it's so flexible, you can add on stuff to add certain functionality. If you don't need a certain thing, then it's not in there. But you can add on stuff. So there is an extension pack. It's called for brackets. That's the brackets icon, right? And it has a couple of different extensions here. Let me blow this up so you can see it. There's a brackets key map, which you do not need to use probably. That will sort of make the shortcuts the same as brackets. You don't need to do that really. You can do any of these you want, by the way, but I'm not going to say you need to do that one. The one you probably will do for sure is Live Server. I'll show you that one. There's a couple of others that they suggest. CSS Peek, which is similar to a function in brackets called Quick Edit. You don't have to use that one either. It's not mandatory or anything. And then there's also IntelliSense, which some of this stuff, it might help with some things. You can definitely install that one. Both of these are getting kind of poor reviews right now. And I think as brackets matures a little bit, some of this stuff gets added into brackets. So you don't really need some of this stuff. And you definitely don't have to have either one of these, but you can see they're like So Brackets has these open source kind of extensions, or not Brackets. Well, actually, they both do. VS Code has these open source extensions, and people give reviews, and you can see how many are installed. Like 3 million people installed that one, 2 million that one. But yeah, so sometimes these things break because they get either put into VS Code itself or they cause problems with other things. So that's why I'm not going to say install all these extensions, because they may cause you more problem than they're worth. But definitely be open to installing extensions. There are lots of great ones. There's hundreds or thousands. It's crazy. So I'm not going to tell you to install any really at this point, except for this one, which is called Live Server. So remember when we saw in assignment 1 or exercise 1, when you guys open Brackets, it has a live server that you can see what you're doing in the browser while you're making your page, right? So this is similar to that. It is a little bit different, but it is similar. So I would suggest putting that one in. You don't have to put this one in either, but I would suggest it. And I'll show you how that works. Like I said, there's a lot of other ones as well. There's also, well, let's go ahead and get into it and see. So here's what we had in Brackets, right? Here's your page 1 that you had in Brackets that you guys did already. Hopefully you did it. If you didn't do it, turn it in, man. You're late. So yeah, you probably did that. This is VS Code. So it may look a little different depending on, excuse me, depending on how it opens for you. It may have different windows and maybe a different color. Yeah, it's not a huge deal. But what I'm going to do is take you through a little bit about it. And then show you how to get it running. So obviously you go to download it and install it. That's pretty easy, kind of standard, same as you did with Brackets. Just download it and install it, and you see something like this. You might see the welcome screen, which is this one. The welcome screen has places where you can start a new file. You can open a folder. It shows your recent files. It'll be blank until you actually open some files. There's a bunch of cool help stuff here. So there's a printable keyboard cheat sheet. It's not really cheating. It just shows you keyboard shortcuts. VS Code is made to do everything from the keyboard, almost, probably, maybe everything. So you don't have to use the mouse too much. The serious coders try to stay away from the mouse because it slows them down. You know, they gotta be cool and not use the mouse. So that is a cheat sheet for that. There's also a bunch of introductory videos, which like I said, I'll link to. But you can also see them right in VS Code, like getting started, code editing, personalizing, extensions, etc. So that's in there, tips and tricks, some other stuff. You can check that out yourself. You can also customize here. You can change the color theme. I'm going to leave it the way it is, but there's a bunch of color themes, just colors of the different text and things. People like their themes. You can change the key bindings, which are shortcuts. Like I said, I'm not going to do that because probably no point. You can install support for other languages, and like many languages. JavaScript is already kind of in there, but Python, Java, PHP, Azure, almost anything you want. So it's very versatile. Studio Code is very versatile. There's also some learn stuff, so you can go, like this one's kind of cool. You click on interface overview and it shows you like a little popover that shows you the interface a little bit, but I'm going to show you that right now, but that's there as well. There's also an interactive playground to try out things. So that's in there as well. And then there is, there's the command palette, which is this was Shift Command P on a Mac. But everything in all these menus and everything is in this command palette. So when you get good at it and you remember things, if you want to do something, you can hit Shift Command P and then start typing, and it will filter your whatever you're doing until you get to what you want to do, like close window or something. Not like you couldn't do that easier a different way, but just remember that's in there. That is the command palette. Probably won't show you that again. Okay, so that's the welcome screen. There's also a getting started screen, which is kind of like a smaller version of that one, I guess. You can get to all these screens by going up to help and then welcome or getting started. There's the playground. There's documentation. That's like how VS Code works. Release notes, shortcuts, introductory video, all that stuff is back in there too. So you don't really have to go to those screens if you don't want to. So I'm going to open, let me give you I'm going to open a folder that you don't have just to show you around a little bit. So I'm going to go to open folder, and then I'm going to go to the desktop, And I'm going to open this thing called test site for FTP practice. You might see this one later, just to show you so you can see some files and what things look like. So now it opens up and you'll see this Explorer pane opens up over here on the left. That's where you can see your files, very similar to brackets, right? So same thing there, kind of. You can twirl these down and open up folders. These are folders with inside of folders, so you can do that. You can also see open editors here. So getting started is actually open. If I want to close it, I hit the X, that closes it. And then if I open a file, so if I click on it once, it's some people call it a soft open. You see this is italicized here. So it's kind of open, but it's kind of not. If I double click it, it goes to normal text versus italicized, and now it's really open. And it stays up here in the open editors area. Also, since we're here, you can see that there's some buttons that pop up. You can add a file. Let me see if I can get that to zoom in right. You can add a file there. You can, and if you roll over these, it'll tell you what it does. You can toggle the editor layout. You can save all. You can close all the editors, that kind of stuff. If you roll over the folder, you'll get a new file, new folder, refresh Explorer, and then collapse folder. So you get some commands here if you roll over stuff, which is pretty cool. So if you want to make a new file, you could. But here you can see that what this page looks like in VS Code, and it's very similar to here. It's a different color scheme, but that's not a big deal. People like their black backgrounds now, I think. So if I click on these, they open, right? And you can see it goes to another open editor up here, and it has that italicized look again. Unless you double click it, then it's really open. Then you get tabs up here at the top, right? So I can tab between different files there. You can also drag these guys around to open them in a kind of a split window thing. There's also a split window button way over here. Just like in brackets, right? There's a split window button there in brackets, same sort of deal. So I can just drag this actually. So say I wanted to open this one on the right, I'm gonna drag it over here. There we go. So now I've got this window open on the right, and this, or that's the right, yeah. And this one's on the left. It even has this mini sort of navigation thing. You can zoom through the page if you want. So for this class, you're probably not gonna get past that where you need more than two files open at once. Right now, you've only had one open at once, as far as HTML files kind of thing go. So you can drag these around. Like I said, you could even put them on top, and you can do crazy. You can get nutty and have like 40 things open, which gets kind of unusable actually. But that is possible. So if you close these, they will start closing, obviously, like that, right? So that's the tabs. So that's what I wanted to show you, the tab setup there. Let's go through a little bit more of the interface, and then hopefully we'll try to keep this a little bit short. So up here at the top, you've got the Explorer. That's your files. That's on the top left up there. That's what we're looking at now. There's also a search. You can search across all your files here. Like if you're looking for a certain thing, you can search for it. There's also source control built in. So we are not going to use this probably. I say this in this video, but maybe we'll see it later depending on things change. But you can use Git repository to do version control. What does that mean? That means if you want to make different versions of projects, you can, and Git is a service to do that. It gets a little complicated. We kind of do that in some of the more advanced classes. For your purposes, for this class, it's not worth it, probably. Yeah, because it can get pretty complicated. But that is built in, is what I'm telling you. So if you wanted to get into that, you feel free to do that. I'm not going to say, no, don't do it, don't touch that. This next one is run and debug. We're not going to use this either, probably, or you don't really need to use this for our case, for this class, because this is more for like programming stuff, JavaScript, more full-blown programming. You probably heard in the previous video, but we're doing stuff like this. We're putting in some tags, and we'll put in some CSS. This is CSS, which you haven't seen this kind yet. Pretend you didn't see it right now. But we're basically doing CSS and HTML, which you don't need to run and debug per se. You're going to see what it looks like in your browser, like we did in video 1, right? Then this last part is extensions. So this one you will probably use a little bit. This is where you can add on functionality, like I said. So I have a bunch of extensions that I disabled for this video that I have installed, but they all add functionality like for JavaScript or live server and things like that. So if you want to add, let's add the live server, because that's the only one I'm going to actually have you guys do for sure. So, and I think I already had it. Here it is. And so once you search for an extension, you'll find it. Like if I want to look for extensions for HTML, I just type in HTML, and you'll see there's a billion of them. So you can see again like how many people have installed it, what's the rating, stuff like that. So I have live server here. It showed up. That's very popular. It's going to be great for you guys, and you can see it even shows you kind of what it does down here on these. Some of these extensions, like gives you a little GIF of, shows you like what it does. But so what I'm going to do is click enable. You guys would go ahead and just install it, and then I believe it will become enabled, and then that is it. So now if I clear that out, that search, you can see installed. You won't have all this, but it does say live server there, and down at the bottom it says enabled. So that means it's actually turned on. And so that's the only one I have turned on. And for you guys, that's probably fine. Maybe later I'll send you a message like, hey, maybe try this extension. Right here on this little gear, you can turn it back off if you want. So you can manage your extensions with the little gear icon settings, basically. You could disable it. You could uninstall it if you want, but that's how that works. So I think that is that. So that's what's over here on the left. Down here on the bottom left, you've got accounts. You don't really even have to do anything with that right now, I don't think. There's also your settings are down here on the bottom left. I'm down here on the bottom left if you guys didn't see that. Can I even get down there with a zoom? Let's see. There we go. Yeah, there we go. So that's the some of the settings and things are you can get to under there. I'm not going to get into that, but some of the same stuff you saw other places too. Down here at the bottom, you have what's called the status bar. It tells you about, well, this actually added this go live thing, which I'll show you in a minute. But once I have a file open, which I don't, let's go back to this guy. Here, we're back on this guy. So now that I'm on this, if I click on, this is line 16, right? I think you saw this in video 1 probably, but you have line numbers for your code, right? We're on line 16. And it's just a way to say like, hey, what line are you on? I'm on line 16, I'm on line 17. So I'm on line 16 right now, and it's kind of highlighted. And then down here in the bottom, it says where I am actually down here too. Line 16, column 8. And then some other stuff like we're in UTF, which we put up here. Remember, that's our encoding format. That's for a web page. We're in HTML. It knows it's in HTML because that's what I opened. If you make a new file, it's going to ask you, hey, what kind of file is this? And you can just pick HTML. But since this is already an HTML file, it knows this is an HTML file. This one here is the go live, the run, the live server, which I will show you on a different file. I think that's the status bar. That's good. I think we're good with the interface. Yeah, I think so. So let me open, so what I'm gonna do, have you guys actually do something now, because you're just watching and getting bored and sleepy, right? So I'm gonna go ahead, here's your file that you guys made. Hopefully you made this for assignment 1, right? So what I'm gonna do is put this in a folder, and I don't think I made you do this in assignment 1 in the video that you probably saw. But generally, it's a good idea to put stuff in a folder. So I'm going to right-click and make a folder. And I'll just call this folder 1 because it's a horrible name. I'll pick a horrible name. And I'm going to put that guy in there. So I just dragged that in there. Sorry, I had to pause there for a second. I couldn't see where my file went. Oh, because I have, well, yeah, anyway. I think I'm okay now. So I've got page 1. That's the one you guys did, right? So if I look at that, yeah, you guys did that, except your name is there and not mine, hopefully. So now I've got a folder called Untitled Folder 2. That's a bad name, but we don't care. Yeah, it's pretty bad, but let's just go with it, right? Okay, so so now I'm going to go back to VS Code and open that thing. So I'm going to say File Open or Command O. Also, I didn't really go over this, but a lot of those commands and things are obviously underneath this menu up here. On Mac, it's up here at the top. So I'm going to go to Open, which is Command O. And I'm going to open that folder, the one that I just made, which has got the terrible name of Untitled Folder 2, open. And then it's going to close all that junk I was just doing. And this is kind of a workspace. I think it's called a workspace in VS Code. And there's my file, right? So there's Untitled folder 2. There's my file. That's the one you guys already did. Awesome. And then if I double click it, it's really open, right? Not sure why that does that, but that's what I do. So now we're in this file that we had, you guys already did in brackets, but you could do it in VS Code as well, obviously. And then I'm going to make space for a browser. So I'm going to go ahead now, and let me get rid of this guy. And I'm going to go ahead and open a browser. So that's what this live server thing does. So if I go down here, click on Go Live, which always confuses me because that's the name of a really old app that used to do web pages with. It's called Go Live from Adobe, actually, and it's weird. It tricks me. So here we go. Now it's open, right? So that looks a lot like brackets, right? If I went to brackets, which I won't do because we're wasting a lot of time here. If I went to brackets and clicked the lightning bolt preview thing, that would preview it and it would do the same thing. The difference here is this is not live. I mean, it's live, but it's not live. What I mean is, if I go in here and type something, nothing happens, right? I can close this little guy too. Because this is not, I didn't save this. It is similar in brackets. It gives you a little dot. That means it's not saved, right? So it's not saved, and so this looks the same. If I refresh, nothing happens. So in VS Code, this is a little bit different, and actually the major downfall for me with VS Code is it doesn't have a real live sort of temporary file that you can work on. So I have to save this. So I'm going to do save, Command S, just like on every other app, or Control S on a PC. And now it's saved, and I don't know if you guys saw that, but it refreshed. So now that stuff is in there. So yeah, it's not quite live. They should call it semi-live, undead. Maybe it's a vampire. I don't know. Not quite live, but close, right? So, oops, yeah. So I'm going to take that out, and then I'll save, and you see it just refreshed again. So you could do it that way. You can save every time, and it'll refresh without having to go over here and click refresh like you would do if it was a truly not a server at all. You could open the file and just click refresh, and that would also work. But yeah, so that's the way that works in VS Code. One thing you can do to speed this up if you want, so like the downside is you do have to save, but I can go up here and go up to File and go to Autosave. So now that I have Autosave on, if I do type something in here, there's a slight delay. I just typed this Swedish, I think that's Swedish, right? I just typed that there, and it showed up here. And I didn't save that time. I didn't hit Command S or Control S on a PC to save. It saved itself. So that's what you can do here is go to Autosave, turn that on if you want, and it'll save, and then it'll automatically refresh over here. And if I put more stuff in there, after about a second, it'll appear. That is a setting, by the way. Let's go to settings. And there's obviously a bunch of settings in here. Your autosave, so I just turned that on. Here are the preferences for autosave. So that's under this gear icon here. And then I'm going to go to settings. And then there is the autosave. It's the first one, which is probably good. So you have a number of things you can set here. You could say off. That's what it was by default. You could say after delay, and then these two are like on window changes, which, yeah, I don't know. I probably wouldn't use that. I mean, you could, but you'd have to click away from your editor to see that. So after delay is the one I just turned on by default. And somewhere there is a delay time, but I think it's 1 second. You could change that somewhere, and I'm not sure where that is, but it's about 1 second. It's usually fine. By the way, if you want to change the size of your text in your editor, you can also do that here. So it went directly to commonly used for settings. I had already changed mine to 16, so you guys could see. Let me make it a little bigger so you guys can see better. I wasn't thinking about that. So I just changed my font size to 20. So you can change your font size there. You can also change your font. All that kind of stuff is under settings. Okay, so now if I go back to my page, you can see now it's got 20, size 20 text. And then if I delete this, it waits about a second and then it goes away. All right, the last thing I want to do is just add on a bit more to this page so that you guys can, so I can see that you guys did watch this video, I guess. Right, so I'm gonna go ahead and put in a paragraph. I'm gonna go to line 18, or just below the block quote that we did, right, from your file from before. So I'm gonna type a left angle bracket again, and then you can see it comes up with some suggestions. And I'm gonna type P and for paragraph, and then I type my right angle bracket, and then it automatically does the closing quote or the closing tag for me. And then I can start typing in there. So I'm gonna say, I did this with VS Code. Something like that. And I spelled this with wrong, which I always do for some reason. So now it says I did this with VS Code in the actual page, so you can see that's kind of working. Just to show you how you can get some of the same code hinting in VS Code that you do in brackets, I'm gonna put a space in there. Let's put a style on there again, just like we did up here on line 14 with that previous paragraph. I'm gonna put in a style, and as soon as I start typing style, or ST, it comes up with style, and I can hit enter, and it enters the style attribute for me again. And I'm gonna do color, and as soon as I start typing color, it comes up with that, and I can hit enter again, or return, or tab, I think, and it'll complete that for me. And then I'm just gonna pick a new color. Let's do aqua. You guys can pick whatever color you want. I'm gonna be super open for that. Ooh, that's terrible. Sure, whatever. That's bad design. Let's not do aqua. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna do green. Yeah, that's at least readable. So I just did green. Yeah, that's good. So you can see it put in a bunch of this code for me. It put in my closing quote. It put in my semicolon, which is the end of that declaration, that CSS declaration, just like it did up there. So very similar to it does in brackets. So yeah, so we just added that on to your assignment 1. So this is going to be your new version of assignment 1. And of course, if I want to save it, I just do Command S to save it. And we're done. So I think that's it. Sorry if that was kind of quick, but I wanted to get you through that. Like I said, for the class, I'm assuming you're seeing this after the first video. You can use VS Code or brackets, either one. I like brackets because of some things that it does, as far as the not having to save to see a preview. Oh, and I forgot to mention the other thing that brackets does that VS Code does not do. Remember, in brackets, I can click on something in the preview browser, and it'll go to that spot in the code for me, which is kind of a really cool shortcut to find the code that relates to this, whatever you're clicking on over here. This does not do that. So that is another sort of disadvantage to VS Code. But most people will tell you that VS Code is the way to go going forward. So feel free to do that. But you guys are, I'm gonna give you guys lots of freedom on this. Use either one, or use something else if you want, but the code is all gonna be the same as far as what we're doing. It just how you get it in there is a little bit different. All right, I think that's it for this one, and I'll talk to you again later.